All right, once again, a non-post game recap because yet another thing happened in the NBA that I decided I wanted to talk about. Though the last video was kind of more of a conversation about how I approach talking about basketball and takes and stuff like that. But today, we're talking about Ja Morant because he just recently said that he is a top 5 point guard. And as soon as this comment came out, I was like, God damn it, the discourse around this is going to be obnoxious. Before I get into this, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and drop a like on this video. Also, if you have not watched it already, newest deep dive about Skip Bayless, I believe is the best deep dive that I've done. So if you have not watched that already, then please go watch that. But with that out of the way, let's talk about Ja Morant, because here's the thing. No, Ja Morant is not a top 5 point guard. He is objectively, although it's not really objective, but like if we're just taking away his bias, I don't think anyone without bias is claiming that Ja Morant is a top 5 point guard in the NBA. There's a pretty good case that he's not even a top 10 point guard, depending on who you ask and depending what you're defining as point guard, because there's players like Luka and LeBron James that people are like, are they a point guard? Are they not a point guard? James Harden's in that category. So what liberties you take with that might crack him into the top 10. It depends. Jamal Murray, is he a point guard or a shooting guard? Things like that. Even though he's pretty much played point guard his entire career, but he plays more like a shooting guard because of Jokic, but that's a whole nother thing. But no, Ja Morant's not a top 5 point guard. That's not what this video is about. I think that's kind of obvious to most people who have no bias towards Ja Morant. The issue is, like I said from the intro, the discourse around this is obnoxious. It's very obnoxious because I immediately go to the replies and there's people arguing like, is he kidding? This player is better than Ja Morant. And it's like, dude, no, you're not wrong that Chris Paul is better than Ja Morant. You're not wrong about that. You're not wrong that De'Aaron Fox or Kyle Lowry are better. You're not wrong about that. What you're wrong about is being mad at Ja Morant for having confidence in himself. And this is something that has kind of always happened. Sure, there's players who take it to too far of an extreme, like Michael Beasley, for example, who said that the only reason he's not in the league was because he was too good, basically. At least that's how Ask the Truth interpreted it from a clip that I saw where he said, like, I don't even remember what the fuck he said. Michael Beasley is a character. But this has been a thing before. Players have said, I think I'm this good, and then everyone flips the fuck out. Like, another example of this, and on a more extreme scale of things, is LeBron James believes he is the GOAT. And so many people get offended by that. I don't believe LeBron's the GOAT. I still think it's Michael Jordan. But I'm not mad at I'm not mad at LeBron for thinking he's the GOAT. I'm not mad at Kobe. When he was on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon, there was something where he was like, either he had to eat this nasty ass thing or tell me who the top 3 players of all time are, or who you rank between you, Jordan, and LeBron. And he ranked himself number 1. And like, I don't think Kobe's even top 5, but Kobe is perfectly within his rights to have believed that about himself. Even Paul Pierce, when he ranked himself above Dwayne Wade, while I did clown on him just because I don't like Paul Pierce, I kind of understand that he has that confidence. He's not higher all time than Dwayne Wade. Absolutely not. Not a better player either. But if he wants to feel that way, he is free to feel that way, because the thing is, if you think about any player who has reached the level of talent that Paul Pierce has, or LeBron, or Kobe, and even players who have just reached the level of talent of Ja Morant, they're going to have an ego about themselves, and they're going to have to believe in themselves. You don't get to being as good at basketball as even Ja Morant is, let alone LeBron and Kobe, without believing in yourself, without thinking highly of yourself. You just don't get there. If your mindset is, I'm not as good as this player, I'm not as good as this player, I'm not as good as this player, you're not going to get that far unless you just have a mind that can still power through those thoughts. I'm sure that exists to some extent, because not every player thinks they're the greatest player ever, and plenty of players are, like the 30th player in the NBA and consider themselves in that tier, I'm sure, and have that confidence in themselves. Regardless, it's possible to be objective about yourself, but in terms of pure competition, it's going to be far and few between when you find a guy who's like, yeah, I looked at the list. I don't think I'm better than this guy. So I'm probably like the 8th best point guard in the like. That doesn't really exist. Maybe some players will give a humble answer, be more politically correct, I suppose, and they're not going to say stuff that is going to be, as what's the word? Like, it'll draw more headlines and get more attention on them. Ja Morant might just be perfectly content to, say, I'm like the 10th best point guard in the NBA and move on, and nobody really fucking cares. Even if there's some discourse, it's different than when he's top 5. So maybe a player will avoid that headline, for example. But I'm telling you, like, those players think of themselves like that. Another thing is, like, so many people give credit to Michael Jordan for not saying he's the greatest of all time. He's like, oh, there's so many other legends. How can I put myself up? Come on. Michael Jordan thinks he's the greatest player of all time. He absolutely does. Like, are you fucking kidding me? He definitely thinks he's the greatest player of all time. Like, what kind of psycho retires with 3 rings because he doesn't have anything left to prove? That's somebody who thinks he's the GOAT, and that was before he got 3 more. Michael Jordan absolutely believes he is the greatest player of all time, and you know what? Good on him to believe that. Even if you don't think he's the GOAT, I do, so to me, he is the GOAT, so it makes sense for him to believe he is the GOAT. But I also think it makes sense for LeBron and Kobe to believe they are the greatest of all time, because that's how it is. That's in their head that got them to this level. Kobe did not get to be as good as Kobe was by thinking he wasn't all that. That's just the reality of the situation with an athlete at that level, with that level of competitiveness. You're going to have an ego, you're going to think highly of yourself, and you're going to be better for it. When Ja Morant released this statement, I said Ja has the right to have that confidence in himself, but more importantly than that, it's important that he has that confidence in himself, because if Ja Morant didn't have that confidence, I don't know that he would ever be a top 5 point guard in the NBA, but I do think he can be one day, a good bit because of that confidence. So when people are giving him shit for having that belief in himself, I'm like, but that belief is what's making Ja Morant Ja Morant. It's a big part of who he is, and a big part of who he is going to be, a big part of what's going to make him who he's going to be. Another example I can think of that obviously no one looks at badly in hindsight, but when it happened at the time, Derrick Rose being like, why can't I win MVP this year? People were like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Why can't you win MVP? You're 22. You're not winning MVP. This is like your 4th year or whatever the fuck. You're on a rookie contract. Like, obviously you're not winning MVP. Why would you believe you could do that? Are you out of your mind? Guess what he did? He won fucking MVP. But also that it doesn't have to be proved correct. Ja Morant doesn't have to prove himself to be a top 5 point guard now or in the future just for him to be valid in that belief in himself. Just in general, I think if you're looking for an objective, or at least whatever objective is, because nothing is ever truly 100% objective, if you're looking for that kind of thing, if you're looking for an objective top 5 point guard in the NBA, you're going to have to look at somebody that's not an NBA player, or at least not somebody who plays that position, because that's just simply, you're going to have that bias, as you should. So that was very frustrating to me. You can't expect a player to have an objective view set on themselves. And I got a reply on a tweet that was like, what do you expect him to say? Like, I'm not even a top 15 point guard. I call myself fraud or something like that. Like, it was funny, but it's like, what do you expect him to say? Do you expect him to be like, just like, nah, I'm not that good? I'm kind of overrated, actually. I think I'm one of the most overrated players in the league, the most overrated young player, like Rusty Bucket said. Like, no, he's not going to think that of himself, and he has no reason to think that of himself. Ja Morant is a damn good player, and he thinks he's an even better player than he is, and that's okay. As long as he's not being an obnoxious dickhead about it, like I'll see some players do from time to time, I ain't got no qualm with that. Is that the right term, qualm? Issue? I don't fucking know. But I wanted to talk about that because just the discourse around it was frustrating to me. Players are allowed to believe in themselves, and I think that's what makes great players great. So when people are like, but actually he's not, like, we know. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, that was that video. Again, go check out the deep dive if you have not already. But yeah, subscribe to the channel, drop a like, all that. Bye.